In the news recently, there was kind of a little side story, a little human interest story about a well-known politician and the relationship that he has with his staff. There was a kind of an internal staff memo that got leaked out to the press that was a little bit embarrassing for this elected official. It was his demands when it came to what kind of hotel room he would stay in when he was on the road. There were certain demands that had to be met, or he and his sort of entourage would pick a different hotel. So kind of simple things like he doesn't want to be near the elevator because it makes a lot of noise, and when people get off an elevator, they will make noise and it will disturb his sleep. Another one was they didn't want to be near that little room that hotels have that have the ice machine. Right? It makes too much noise and it'll wake him up. Another was that he had to have a king-sized bed. If the hotel could not provide a king-sized bed, they would go to a different hotel. And then the one that got the most attention was that whatever room he was staying in, it had to be able to get to 60 degrees so that he could sleep at night. So a lot of people are like, wow, what a nice life. King bed, 60 degrees. I think that's a little chilly to try to get a good night's sleep. Probably costs a lot of money too. But there was kind of this idea of like, wow, what a kind of a control freak, trying to kind of control every little aspect so he could get a good night's sleep. There's been other stories especially about entertainers, Hollywood types, making kind of specific demands when they go to a city. So famously, back in the 80s, there was a rock band, and one of the points in their contract was in their dressing room, they wanted to have M&Ms. Fine. In this particular case, though, they wanted the M&Ms to only be one color, brown. If there was a green M&M, they would leave. That's control. Other instances of wanting very specific things, a certain kind of fruits or cheeses, certain kinds of soft drinks. This idea of control and wanting to kind of control every little thing in our lives is something that we all deal with. But when it comes to our spiritual lives, and when it comes to life as a whole, if we're honest with ourselves, most of our life is outside of our control. The old phrase that says that life is 10% how you make it and 90% how you take it. So much of our life is outside of our control. I think COVID really made that really clear. As much as we wanted it to go away, as much as we wanted to be able to do what we wanted to do, we couldn't and we didn't. So much of our lives are out of our control. And for a lot of people, that's a problem. To not be able to control every little aspect. When people do things on a kind of trivial level that kind of annoy us, we want them to change. We want them to act the way that we want them to act. But it's also on a much larger scale. Think of how much we can't control, especially in Oklahoma when it comes to weather. Even the smartest among us, even the meteorologists among us, they don't control the weather. They just kind of tell us what it's going to be. And then we have to then adjust. And so wanting to be in control is something that we all face. I think it's especially poignant when it comes to our health. Many of you dealing with your own health issues, maybe a relative or a friend who's not doing so well. That's in many cases outside of our control. Getting old. Try to not get old. You can't do it. You can't do it. It's outside of our control. So then, what do we do? What do we do with so much of life outside of our control? We see it in the gospel today. Jesus is on a boat and they're going across to the other side. And what happens? A violent storm comes up, water crashing into the boat. But Jesus, as he does, when we invite him in, what does he do? He brings his peace. Jesus brings his peace. He calms the storm, and they reach safely to the other side. The first reading today was from the book of Job. If you've ever read the book of Job in the Old Testament, there is not an unluckier guy on the face of the earth than Job. Story after story, day after day of just things pounding away at him. But Job keeps faith. Job keeps faith, despite all of these things outside of his control happening to him. But I think it's today's second reading that really offers us a way out. If control is your thing, if you're struggling with trying to control life, I think especially those of you young people, you're trying to think ahead of what is my life going to become? Where am I going? A lot of that is within your control, but a lot of it is outside. I want to go here, I want this job. Well, you can't force yourself on a job. They have to want you too. And so it's outside of your control. But I think the second reading today from St. Paul to the Corinthians gives us a little key, a little glimpse. St. Paul says that Jesus died so that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and rose again for us. In other words, it's a call for every single one of us, no matter who we are, no matter our state in life, whether young or old or healthy or ill, wherever we may be, it's a call to get out of ourselves. To get out of ourselves. St. John Paul II calls this the law of the gift, that our lives are meaningful only in as much as we give our lives away. And so it's calling us to a life of generosity, to a life of service of those around us. And where ought that to start? Well, it ought to start with the people closest to us. Today we celebrate Father's Day. Today we look at the beautiful model of St. Joseph. Pope Francis, a few months back, declared this the year of St. Joseph, an opportunity for the church as a whole to really look at the life of that great saint. And what made him great? St. Joseph was not about himself. St. Joseph was about living a life of service to his wife, to their child, and providing for his family as a husband and a father. And in that, he found sanctity. He found holiness. The great St. Teresa of Calcutta, great line. She says, you want to change the world? Go home and love your family. We get these big ideas of how we're going to go out and we're going to change this and change that. And then when we start working on it, we realize, man, that's really hard. It's really hard to change a whole country. It's really hard to change how a state works. It's even hard to change kind of a local community towards what we want it to be. But where we can affect great change is that which is in our control, and it's those closest to us. It's our families. St. Joseph knew it, and St. Paul is calling us to that life. In order to get out of this sort of control mode where everything has to be exactly as we want it to be, we have to get out of ourselves and become more generous people, giving our lives away. And we do that in lots of different ways. We do that certainly with the vocations to which God calls us to, maybe marriage or priesthood or religious life perhaps. We do that in the careers that we choose. Am I just looking out for myself? Or is my career, what I'm going to study, can that be a way that I make the world a better place? That I give my life away in service? We do it in our relationships, with our families, with our friends, with strangers, with the poor. the more we give our lives away, the less control becomes an issue. And so we come to the Lord today in the Mass. We come to the Lord today in the Eucharist. And I would encourage you, if control is a thing, if you're having trouble trying to kind of keep up, if you're having trouble trying to control every little aspect of your life, spend more time in prayer and spend more time in service to people around you. And what you'll see is a lot of those control issues will go away. And so we say today to Jesus in the Eucharist, as we give these control issues away, we say to Jesus with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, those great words of Saint Faustina, who simply said, Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you.